Hey everyone! We are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content and it is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button right now as we proceed. This is an absolute heist in the making for the Toronto Blue Jays, folks. And a bombshell new report has just dropped surrounding one specific trade target for the Jays, involving a very familiar outfielder who has been persistently linked to Toronto in trade rumors before. But this new report isn't just rehashing old speculation. It's revealing brand new information surrounding the Blue Jays' pursuit that changes everything about how we should view this potential blockbuster deal. We're going to break down exactly what this report says, discuss why this trade would be highway robbery for the Toronto Blue Jays, and examine whether the cost might actually be too high even for a perfect fit. Not only that, we've got the Jays making yet another under-the-radar signing as we inch closer and closer to spring training, plus a few other major updates. Before we dive in, you guys have been absolute beasts with the support during this quieter off-season period. The Jays are approaching spring training and we're going to keep you updated every single day like we always do. So let's jump right into this potential game-changing move. A new article just dropped with the headline that the Blue Jays are being linked to a game-changing trade for a 28-year-old outfielder. Now, sure, the headline is slightly sensationalized because that's how sports media works in 2026. But buried in this article is a legitimate report from Mitch Bannon of The Athletic, one of the most reliable Blue Jays insiders in the business, and what he revealed is absolutely fascinating. The report states that the Jays checked in on Cleveland Guardians outfielder Kwan at last year's trade deadline, and his left-handed contact bat would fit absolutely perfectly, hitting between George Springer and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at the top of the lineup. However, and this is the crucial part, the Cleveland Guardians were said to be asking for a gargantuan return. We're talking several high-level prospects plus at least one major league-ready player who can make an immediate impact at the big league level. So we're talking about Kwan today, and there's a very clear reason why this conversation matters so much. Mitch Bannon from The Athletic, the Blue Jays beat reporter who has proven sources and credibility, has recently linked the Jays to Kwan once again. And when you actually break down what Kwan brings to the table, the articles claim that he's a game-changer for this Toronto Blue Jays team makes complete sense. The Blue Jays have tons of experience and a proven track record of successfully trading with the Cleveland Guardians organization. The Blue Jays love to set themselves up for the future while simultaneously making a trade that helps them win in the present. They did exactly this when they acquired players like Andrés Giménez in previous deals. It's a strategy that's worked beautifully for them. Now, Dalton Varsho is slated to hit free agency after this upcoming season. That reality might open up an outfield spot that needs filling sooner rather than later. The Jays might extend Varsho, sure, but there's genuine uncertainty there. This is where Kwan enters the picture as the perfect solution. Kay Matson, who's been on my show and runs JaysRightly.com, always talks about how the Blue Jays love to make sneaky under-the-radar trades that work for both the present and the future. They specifically target players who come with team control, not just expensive rentals. Kwan is on a fantastic contract that provides years of control. And let's be brutally honest here, he would fit this team beautifully from both a statistical and stylistic perspective. Last season he posted a 3.7 WAR with a 705 OPS. He's not necessarily the best pure hitter in baseball or a massive power threat, but he fits the Blue Jays organizational approach absolutely perfectly. He steals bases and has legitimate speed, which the Jays desperately lack right now in their current outfield configuration. He's really good defensively, having won back-to-back Gold Glove awards. We're talking about one of the absolute best defensive outfielders in all of baseball. Imagine pairing him in the outfield with Dalton Varsho, George Springer, and Anthony Santander. Both Springer and Santander aren't exactly known for their elite defense at this stage of their careers, so you can really compensate for those defensive liabilities by having Kwan patrolling one of the outfield spots. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Let's say the Jays do have to give up Nathan Lukes and Joey Loperfido, two of their top-tier prospects, in any potential deal. I would still absolutely love this move and think it makes tremendous sense for the organization's competitive window. Look, Kwan isn't going to hit the ball particularly hard. He won't have the flashiest peripherals that analytics nerds drool over. But he does not strike out, which the Blue Jays coaching staff absolutely loves in their hitters. He's one of the best defenders in baseball alongside Dalton Varsho. This is a move that makes so much sense on so many levels. And the Blue Jays have clear, established connections to the Guardians organization. They always seem to make moves with Cleveland. Andrés Giménez, Shane Bieber, these are recent examples. It makes so much sense it's almost laughable when you think about the organizational fit. Now, as it pertains to the return package that Cleveland would demand, Mitch Bannon specifically talks about needing a major league-ready player as part of the package. Maybe that's Nathan Lukes. Maybe it's Joey Loperfido. It's probably realistically a combination of both because Lukes does have legitimate trade value but won't be viewed as a future cornerstone player, which is probably what Cleveland is looking for in return. But let's say it involves somebody like Joey Loperfido or Nathan Lukes, one of those two as the centerpiece. Then you're going to have to dive deep into your prospect pool, ladies and gentlemen. When we think back to last year's trade deadline, Ken Rosenthal revealed that the Toronto Blue Jays continued to have extensive talks with the Minnesota Twins about reliever Griffin Jax and with the Cleveland Guardians about Stephen Kwan, according to sources directly briefed on those conversations. When you look at where those conversations could have potentially gone, the Jays have built a really strong prospect pool now. Let's remove a few untouchables from the top 10 prospects. You're obviously not going to trade Trey Savage. You're not going to trade JoJo Parker. You're probably not going to trade Arjun Nimala. Maybe you do in the right deal, but that seems unlikely. But guys like Gage Standifer, who's a rising star prospect in the system, is that someone the Jays would be willing to give up for an outfielder of Kwan's caliber? Maybe, maybe not. But any of these guys in the top 10 prospects, you can make a legitimate argument that they'd be worth trading for Stephen Kwan just because of the massive amount of value he brings to the major league roster. Last season he played 156 games, hit 11 home runs, drove in 56 runs, and stole 21 bases. When you compare this to their clear documented pursuit of Kyle Tucker earlier in the offseason, a pattern emerges. The Jays desperately want outfielders. They want controllable pieces with multiple years of team control. There's genuine uncertainty with Anthony Santander going forward. There's uncertainty with what Nathan Lukes is going to produce this year. There's uncertainty with what George Springer can give them at this stage of his career. What does your outfield actually look like beyond next season? Varsho becomes a free agent. Springer is approaching free agency. What do you have then? Nathan Lukes in arbitration? What are you going to do necessarily? That's the massive question mark hanging over this roster construction. You have some young guys who could come up through the pipeline eventually, but why not take advantage of the assets you have right now while you're trying to win? If the Guardians were willing to trade Kwan back in July and are reportedly still willing to do so this offseason, yes, it would take a ton of prospect capital. But I genuinely think it's a robbery for Toronto no matter which way you slice it. Some people don't love the fact that Kwan doesn't hit a lot of home runs or provide traditional power numbers. But the style of baseball the Blue Jays want to play fits his skill set perfectly. The Guardians made the World Series and almost won the whole thing last year without relying on massive power, and Kwan was a huge part of that success. Let me be crystal clear. This would be an absolute steal and a perfect fit for this team. Kwan fits this roster construction better than almost any other available outfielder on the trade market. Sure, you could argue for a pure power bat, but you can get power production from Anthony Santander. And you might feel significantly less anxious about playing Santander in right field or left field defensively because you'd have legitimately one of the best defensive outfields in all of baseball with Stephen Kwan anchoring it. Right now you also have to figure out what to do with Addison Barger at that point, and that's where roster construction gets a little bit questionable. Does Barger get directly involved in these trade conversations with Cleveland? If you're trading for Stephen Kwan, where exactly are you going to play all these guys? Let's say you play Kwan in left field, Varsho in center, and Barger in right. Then I don't have any problem with using Santander and George Springer as designated hitters and rotating guys around to keep everyone fresh. That's good roster depth and flexibility. I don't think the Jays would want to trade Barger as part of the package. The Guardians probably asked for Barger specifically, and maybe that's been a major sticking point in previous negotiations. But an outfield of Kwan, Varsho, and Barger would be absolutely fantastic defensively. Now it's 3 left-handed hitters, so if you're going up against a right-hand pitcher, that's fantastic matchup-wise. If you're facing a tough left-handed pitcher, maybe you put Barger at third base for that game, or you could run some interesting alternative lineups where Barger stays in right field, you put Santander in left, and you give Kwan or Varsho a day off. You rotate the designated hitter spot. Injuries are going to come over 162 games. These are roster construction things you can absolutely figure out. I don't think they are problems, they are luxuries. In other news, Shadavidi reported late last night that right-hand reliever Nate Gorrow is getting an invitation to big league spring training camp with the Blue Jays. The 28-year-old struck out 86 batters in 53 2/3 innings last year between High A and Double A New Hampshire. When you dive into his stats, they're not particularly impressive in Vancouver, but in Double A he was pretty darn good. 29 games with a 1.22 ERA before finishing with a 3.19 ERA overall. He struggled initially in A+ ball but turned it around dramatically in Double A. I like these low-risk additions. He's 27 or 28 years old, probably someone they're going to keep on their organizational radar for bullpen depth. They have open bullpen spots beyond their top 4 relievers, so depth matters. So here's what I need from you right now. Do you want to see Stephen Kwan in a Blue Jays uniform? Do you think he would cost too much in prospects? Would you give up Addison Barger for Kwan? Would you give up Nathan Lukes? Would you give up Joey Loperfido? Or do you want them to just ride it out with the current roster? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button if you want this trade to happen. And subscribe with notifications on because we're tracking every development as spring training approaches. This could be the heist of the decade, folks.